Hey everybody, my name is Deja and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be going over all the books that I read in June. June was a pretty good reading month for me. I mostly allowed myself to mood read during June. I didn't really participate in any readathons, and I did have some reading vlog plans, but I decided to kind of scrap those because I knew that July, which I'm filming this in July, would be a little bit more crazy and intense because I'm participating in multiple readathons. One of them is my own, and with the tarot readathon, you never know what you're going to read because it's up to the tarot cards. And I also knew that I wanted to do a lot of reading vlogs surrounding the readathons in general, so I kind of just took June to sit back, relax, really mood read. I had some disappointing reads, but the majority of the reads I really liked, and I did have 2 5 stars, which I absolutely loved. And while I wrap up all of those books, every single month during my wrap ups, I've been crocheting my ratings blanket. So if you want to know all the details, I would direct y'all to my January wrap up. But basically, each of the rows, well, it's actually 2 rows per book now. I switched that up a couple months ago. I restarted, and that's why I'm a little bit behind. But basically, each row of color, every 2 rows, corresponds to a book rating. And if you guys want to know what yarn, hook size, all that, again, my January wrap up will direct y'all to that. But she's getting quite big now. I don't even know if y'all can see her in the full frame because I can't see the way that I need to hold it up, but she's getting quite big. And I've never crocheted a full blanket before, only a baby blanket. So I'm really excited to see her just get even bigger. I've currently crocheted 44 books, so actually 88 rows. So if I was just doing 1 row per book, I would actually be on track, but I really like how 2 rows look. So I am a little bit behind. I'm almost done with April. I'm about like 2.5 months behind, or about like 30 books. Before we get into actually reviewing all the books that I read in June, I always go over my monthly statistics. So in June, I read 15 books. 7 of those were by BIPOC authors. 4 of them had queer representation. I didn't have any rereads or DNFs, and I read 4,551 pages. For genres, I read 7 horror, so a lot of horror this month. I think this is the most amount of horror that I've read all year, except for January. I read a lot as well. I read 1 literary fiction, 2 mystery, 3 romance, and 2 thrillers. And then 5 of them I listened to just on audiobook. 4 of them I read as ebooks. 2 of them I read physically, and 4 of them were hybrids. So I did read a lot more ebooks and physical books this month than any other month so far. For audience, 14 of the books were adult books, and 1 of them was YA. For ratings, I didn't have any 1 or 1.5 stars, but I had a 2 star, a 2.5 star, 2 3 stars, 4 3.5 stars, 4 4 stars, 1 4.5, and 2 5 stars. And then for type, 13 of them were novels, 1 was a novella, and 1 was a graphic novel slash manga slash manhwa. And then for author status, 1 was a debut author, 4 were new to me, and 10 of them were repeat authors. So I read a lot of repeat authors also in June. And I want to show y'all, here are all the books that I read that I physically own. So some of these I did listen to exclusively on audio, even though I physically own them. But anyways, I got them read and off my TBR shelf, and I believe this is 13 books. So only 2 of the books that I read this month I didn't own. So I did a really good job at reading my physical books, and I plan on unhauling 2 of these, and 1 of them I will keep on my shelf, but I could potentially see myself unhauling it later in the future. But the majority of these I really liked and plan on keeping on my shelves. First up, I'm going to start off with my 2 star, of course. So I had 1 2 star this month, and I was really disappointed by this book because I've only ever liked books by this author. It literally has a 4.03 on Goodreads. So a lot of people love this one. All of my friends love this one, but I did not like it. And that is One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid, which is one of the books that I plan on unhauling because I didn't like it. I was so excited for this book because I really enjoyed The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. It's one of my favorite books by her. And then I also really liked Daisy Jones and the Six. So I was really excited to check out one of her more like romance books over her like historical fiction kind of read verse books, and I did not like this one. It was not for me at all. So this book follows Emma, and she married her high school sweetheart, and like a year or so after they got married, her husband went on this kind of like helicopter expedition for his job, and the helicopter ended up disappearing, and she doesn't know what happened to her husband, but he's been presumed dead because he's been missing for a couple years now at this point. She ended up moving back home and changing her lifestyle completely from what it was, because her and her husband lived kind of like a fast-paced travel lifestyle, and now she's living a more like quaint lifestyle. And then she ends up meeting again someone that she knew when she was a teenager, and her and this other man begin to strike up a romantic relationship, and eventually they get engaged. That's not a spoiler. They get engaged, and while she's engaged, her husband, who supposedly disappeared, is actually end up found. He was surviving literally on like an island for years, and he's alive, and now she's kind of stuck between these 2 men, one from her past and one from her present. We do get quite a bit in the story because we see her as a teenager meeting both men, falling in love with her husband, them getting married, them as they're married, her finding out that he like disappeared and everything like that, and then her like changing her life, meeting this other man, their relationship a little bit, and then her husband coming back, and then her kind of, turmoil between the two men. And I think that's where this book kind of failed for me because it is a normal average length book. It's 350 pages. And the reason I really didn't like this book is because I did not feel connected to either of the romances. This is a romance book, and I didn't feel connected to either of the romances because we didn't get any real time with them. We just saw kind of like a highlight reel of the romances, but that's it. We didn't really get too much emotional depth or connection. And that's the part that I really didn't like because how am I reading a romance book and I'm not even rooting for either of the romances? Sometimes that happens where I'm like, just like mid on a romance, but I truly did not care about either of the men. And I think the way that she came to terms and like who she decided on in the end, like the way that that happened was very convenient and seemed not very realistic at all. And it seemed not very realistic at all. Like, I think if I was in this situation, it would take a lot more for me and my partners to decide what is really going to happen. And in this, it didn't really feel like it took that much. I think it definitely emotionally impacted her, but it was very easy for them to come to terms with who she was going to end up with and where her life was going to go, which felt very convenient. And this one I don't think is like a bad book. Obviously people really enjoy it, but I just think for like a romance book, neither of the romances were fleshed out at all, and I just felt like this was a pretty mid book. It was honestly worse than mid. Like, there was not much in this book that I enjoyed at all. Like, this was not a book I enjoyed. My 2.5 star this month was actually Hunted by Darcy Coates, and I read this one for the Thrills and Chills book club. I was in the live show discussion for that. This is hosted by Dana, and I will have her link down below. Thank you so much, Dana, for inviting me. I think this book was objectively a decent book. The story just was not for me. Versus One True Loves, I honestly don't think that that was like a good book. Like, I wouldn't recommend that one. Hunted, I would recommend in certain circumstances because I think people could enjoy it a lot more than I did. Hunted follows a 22-year-old girl named Eileen, and she ends up going into this forest on this like hiking expedition. She just kind of wants to like explore nature and go on an adventure, and she ends up going missing, and her camera is found 5 days later kind of washed up in this river, and the pictures on this camera are very disturbing and kind of show maybe a creature in the woods. Her brother is very heartbroken over her disappearance, so him and his 4 friends end up going into these woods to try and figure out what happened to his sister and if she's still alive, whatever happened to her in general. We also get a police officer's point of view in the story, a detective who works at the local police department who's also looking into the disappearance of Eileen. And she was my favorite perspective. I do think she was a little bit annoying, but I did not feel any connection to the friends at all who went into the story. I don't know, like, I just didn't feel anything for them. I do think a couple of the things that happened in this forest were a little bit eerie, a little bit scary. But for me, I feel like if you're going to have like a survivalist type of story, I really want you to kind of lean into that survival element. And for me, I feel like this didn't get graphic or horrific enough. For me, it is a thriller. It's not a horror book. But the only real like foresty kind of books that I've read that are like survival like that have been horror. I think this one felt a little bit lackluster and a bit underwhelming because I read some really, really good ones, and this one just didn't feel like that. And at no point was I ever excited to pick this one up. Like, I never felt like a draw to do this. If I was not reading it for the book club, I definitely would have DNF'd it for sure because I just never felt a draw or want to pick this up. Technically, I think this is written pretty well. I think Darcy Coates did an amazing job with the writing. I think that she handled having a lot of different characters and their perspectives and switching from their perspectives really, really well. And I think that she did successfully create some tension in the story. It just wasn't enough for me personally and the type of reader that I am. But I will say I loved the ending of this. There's kind of two directions this type of story can take, and I loved the way that it went. Like, I definitely preferred that, and I was shocked by what it ended up being that was kind of in this woods. I was really, really shocked by that. I really should have seen it coming, but I didn't at all. So I really enjoyed the ending, and I wouldn't say the ending made it worth it, but I was happy once I got to the ending at least. Next up are my 3 stars. My first 3-star was a Rest Stop by Nat Cassidy. This is only my second Nat Cassidy, I read Mary by him, which I gave 3.5 stars. So I enjoyed this one a little bit less than that one, but I think it was still like a fun read. It was a novella, so it was super fast. We're just following this young musician who is traveling, and he ends up stopping in this gas station, and he goes to the bathroom and ends up locked in there. And there are horrors happening on the outside of the bathroom, but then also some things are happening inside the bathroom, potentially things getting dropped inside the bathroom and are skittering around in there. And I didn't really know what this was going in. Obviously, I could gather that it was about like a rest stop or a gas station, like someone traveling and going to some sort of location like this. But I didn't expect the type of horror that this was. It really focuses on a lot in the beginning, especially on like bugs and snakes and stuff like that, which I don't think I've really read a book that has too much like focus on that. I've read a couple, but not a lot. So I really liked that element of the horror, but I kind of wish that it kept that for a bit longer because I feel like it went a little bit off the rails at the end, and I wasn't a huge fan of like the horror probably starting around like the 50% mark or 40%. Like after that part, it just felt like it kind of went off the rails, and not in like a necessarily good way, in just a way that I was like, "Oh, okay." Like I didn't hate it by any means, but I was just like, "Oh, like that's an interesting direction for Nat Cassidy to choose to take this story." I do think Nat Cassidy writes horror really, really effectively and really well. So I do applaud the horror in this story. I just personally wish that it kind of went in a different direction in the horror in the second half because, again, it kind of went off the rails in a way that I wasn't the biggest fan of. And I think we could have like taken it in a different direction that I would have liked a bit more. My next 3 star was a bit of a disappointing one for me, and that is The Good and the Bad and the Aunties by Jessie Q. Sutanto. All of the books I read by Jessie Q. Sutanto so far, I've read the first 2 books in this series, and then I've also read the 2 books in the Vera Wong series that are out so far. And I have given all of her other books 4.5 or 5 stars. So for this one to be a 3 star was kind of disappointing for me personally. This one follows the second book where our main character is having her own wedding. So her and her husband went on a honeymoon through Europe, and now they've landed in Asia and they are celebrating the Chinese New Year with her family. And there are like these gifts that they give out on Chinese New Year, and one of her auntie's beaux, like former beaux that she had when she was in Asia, brought some gifts and accidentally ended up giving one away that was meant for one of his business rivals, that was basically to kind of like cement their alliance together. And so now her and the aunties are on this mission to get this gift back for this man, and it goes a lot crazier than you would think. I mean, all these books kind of go crazier. What I really did like about the first 2 books that this one kind of lost for me a little bit is that they both surrounded weddings, and this one didn't have a wedding. It did have the Chinese New Year element, but I really liked the wedding element in the first 2 stories. And so I know, like, because this one is a 3rd book in a series, like how many weddings can they be involved in, but they do run a wedding business. So I feel like we could have kept the wedding vibes going, but the author didn't. And that's fine, but it did kind of detract from my enjoyment a little bit. And this one I feel like went even more outlandish than what I am usually used to. And this one I feel like didn't have that typical crime charm that the other ones normally have. Like the people in this one are kind of like involved in criminal activity a little bit, but not as much as the other ones. And I kind of missed like the murder element. Like this one didn't have really a murder in it while the other 2 did. So I missed that as well. And then also our main character was honestly starting to get on my nerves. I never really had her get on my nerves before this book, but for some reason she was really getting on my nerves. And something about just her narration in this story, I was like, why are we saying these things? But despite my issues with the story, I still liked it because I love all the aunties books. I think the aunties are so fun. I love the family connection in this story. It's truly like such a big part of the series is family, and I love that. And I also loved this, like learning about Chinese New Year a little bit. I love to see how Chinese Indonesian people actually celebrate Chinese New Year because I don't really know much about it. So I really liked that. And I also really liked the end of this. It was very heartfelt. I don't know if any other books are coming out in this series. It feels pretty complete. I could see them adding another book in, like if they wanted to, but if they didn't, I would feel perfectly fine with this series ending. But if they do come out with another book, I will still read it because I really do like this author's work, and I feel like she could definitely redeem the series with me. I feel like with the way that this one ended, I feel like they could bring in an element that I really like in a lot of my stories, and I feel like that would be really fun for me to read. Now moving on to my 3.5 stars, which I had quite a few. I had 4 of them. First up, I have This Delicious Death by Kayla Cottingham, and this is a YA horror book that I had such a fun time with. I think this one is perfect for summer. I've never really read a book that takes place at a music festival, so I really enjoyed that aspect of the story because, as I said, I've never read that, and I think it was just so fun. I've been to one music festival and I had such a good time, so it was really fun to read that. I don't think I'm a music festival girl. Like, I enjoyed when I went, so like kind of being able to live out the music festival vibes in a story is something that I really did have such a fun time with. This one follows this kind of future world. It's not dystopian or post-apocalyptic, but in the story, the Arctic permafrost melting released a pathogen that basically caused some people to become intolerable to regular food, and the only thing that they could eat is human flesh. And the people who went without flesh eventually went feral and kind of would turn into like a typical zombie and turn on their family and friends. But then scientists were able to create this synthetic version of human flesh for these people to live off of. So now they're called ghouls and they are part of the regular population, and they just live off this synthetic flesh. And we're following four girls who all go to school together in Southern California, and they are all ghouls. They want to go to this like music festival by them in the desert, kind of just like hang out and celebrate and have a last hurrah before they graduate. And one of them ends up going feral and killing one of the members of the bands that is at the festival performing. And it kind of just goes crazy from there because other people at this festival are also starting to go feral as well. This one was just kind of a fun take on a zombie novel. If you guys know me, I'm not a huge fan of like zombies or apocalyptic kind of stories. I can tolerate them sometimes or like them sometimes, but this one was kind of such a unique take that I did really enjoy it. I think zombies is something that I don't usually enjoy. Like, if it's going to be an apocalyptic book that I enjoy, it's not typically going to be a zombie book. But this one was just so different that I really enjoyed this take on zombies. And this one had so much discussion around female friendship as well. But then also, this one is sapphic. So there are some sapphic relationships and yearning and feelings, which I also really liked. So overall, this was just like a fun story. It's not anything to write home about, but I had a really good time reading it. And I would definitely recommend it if you want to have a summer read and you're looking for something that is kind of going to be a little bit different. Because again, I've never read something with a music festival, so I think this one was like just a really fun summer read that was perfect for a YA audience. Like, I would definitely recommend this one to a teenager for sure, especially if they're into like spookier things. My next 3.5 star was for my in-person book club, and that is The Unworthy by Agustina Basterica. I was really looking forward to this one, even though I haven't heard the best things about it, because I love Tender the Flesh by this author, but a lot of people have not been liking this one. It just came out earlier this year, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was interesting. It's not one of my favorite books, but I had a decent time reading it, and I also really liked the discussion that we had at my book club. So this one is basically following a woman who is in this religious cult basically after an apocalyptic event happened. It was like an environmental apocalypse, so the world outside of this convent is very like destroyed. Things are underwater, there's no electricity, there's no internet. The world has kind of been decimated a little bit, but there is this convent, and this one is called the Sacred Sisterhood. But our main character is actually deemed one of the unworthy, so she's one of the lowest ranks in this convent, and she dreams of basically climbing the ranks and becoming one of the enlightened. We follow her as she's basically writing her story, and she is definitely an unreliable narrator. Some of the stuff in this, I'm like, I don't even know if I believe her because she is so unreliable and we don't really know what's true and what's not. But I really liked kind of like the convent vibes, and I think that this author has such beautiful prose and really created such an amazing atmosphere. The atmosphere is really what carried the story for me, and the writing, like, I think that's really what made this story what it is, because this story is very fever dreamy, and half the time I was like, not even half, more than half the time, I was like, what the fuck is even going on? A lot of the story I didn't even understand or comprehend fully, and a lot of us in the book club felt that way, where we didn't even know what really happened in the story. Like, some people were able to pick up on things that other people weren't. Like, I picked up on some stuff that other people didn't, and other people picked up on stuff that I didn't. But this is a story that honestly I think you could reread multiple times, because I think on each reread you would pick up something different. I personally don't think I will be rereading this one anytime soon, at least because I liked it, but I didn't like it that much. But I think that if you're looking for something that's kind of like a unique take on an apocalyptic story, because it kind of has like an apocalypse vibe, but literally with a convent, like, it was a very interesting combination, which I really liked. But I wish we kind of explored more of both. I wish we kind of explored more of the cult and the rankings and just more of that. But then also I kind of wish that we explored more of like the outside world, especially like what happened before the story begun, like more of like the actual like apocalyptic event, or like at least had it described to us a little bit more. But I was still really into the story and I flew through it in like one day. My next 3.5 star was The Golden Spoon by Jessa Maxwell. This one I was really excited for because it's kind of like a cozy mystery but with a baking competition. So it's obviously heavily based off the Great British Baking Show or the Great British Bake Off, whichever one you want to call it, which is a baking show I really loved when I watched it years ago. I don't really watch it much anymore, but I really was into the show like when I was in high school. I liked it a lot and I do still love to bake. I bake honestly weekly now because my boyfriend loves a sweet treat. So I bake pretty frequently and I just love baking a lot. It's so fun for me. And so I was really excited for this one to have like a cozy mystery with baking vibes. And so this one, it follows basically this baking competition that happens every summer where basically 6 bakers go to this really big estate and compete to win this baking competition. And the host of the show is actually not nearly as nice or warm or welcoming as she is on camera. And it's a little bit jarring. We're following her a lot in the story because I feel like she's a little bit fake. I'm not going to lie. And things start to go kind of weird this year where it's just like very harmless things in the beginning, where it is like sugar replaced with salt or a burner on too high or something like that, where obviously someone's messing with the contestants and you don't know if it's like another contestant or what. But you know, it's not harmless because there are competing in a competition, but it's not deadly. But then a body ends up turning up and everybody is a suspect. What I really, really loved about the story is we actually got so much of the baking content in the beginning, like really hearing the characters like describe like the steps that they're doing and talking about baking in detail. And I know a lot of people probably won't like that element, but I really liked it because that's kind of something that we don't really see necessarily all the time. Like, of course, in the Great British Baking Show, we see them baking, we see them talking about baking, but truly being in their minds was so interesting, especially for other bakers. I'm not anywhere near as good or expert as them, but I loved hearing them talk about all the technical aspects of baking. And I really enjoyed the characters a lot. They were so diverse and interesting that I really liked them, but I wasn't really attached to the murder mystery. Like, I didn't really care that much. I honestly wanted more of the baking, which was surprising to me because I love a good murder. And so I just really wasn't that interested in the murder, and especially, and this story also kind of revealed some secrets about people and families and past. Like, we got more secrets than I anticipated, and I really didn't care about those plot lines at all. I really was like, okay, let's get back to at least the murder mystery or the baking, but all the extra stuff I really wasn't like super interested in at all. But I had such a good time with this one still because just the vibes of it were giving the Great British Baking Show in a book, which was so fun. My last 3.5 star was The Last Party by A.R. Torrey. I really wanted to like this one because a lot of my friends liked it, and I did like it. I will say that I did like it, but a lot of my friends really love this one, like gave it 5 out of 5 stars, saying this is A.R. Torrey's best work, which I read The Girl in 6E, and I liked that one a lot more than this one. Even though this one was still good, it just felt like kind of a regular thriller to me. Like, I really like thrillers that have a lot happening or something unique or just something crazy. And this one didn't really have that. Like, I feel like it wasn't that crazy. It was just a thriller, and that's fine. It was enjoyable, but it really wasn't anything like mind blowing like some people made it out to be. And I wish that it was, but it wasn't for me. This one follows Perla, and she lives an amazing life with her husband. They're rich, they have a daughter, and she is basically just comes across as like the perfect wife, the perfect mother. But she actually has a secret obsession with a true crime case where basically this man ended up killing 2 girls at his daughter's like birthday sleepover, and he is now serving his life sentence for this murder. We're following the murderer as well as he's in prison, and there is a doctorate student who is interviewing him over and over for his dissertation. And everything begins to just intertwine, the past and the present, everything, and things just begin to come out and like come together. And again, like, this was a fun time. Like, I liked the murder mystery element, I liked the different perspectives. I think that it was well written, it was really fast paced, it was a quick pool read. I read it literally in the pool and it was great for that, but it wasn't anything crazy. Like, it was just a good thriller. I would recommend it if this sounds like a premise that you would like, but it's not anything that is gonna like change your life, or at least it didn't for me. me. Moving on to my 4 stars, my first one is actually a sequel to a thriller, and that is The Perfect Divorce, which is the sequel to The Perfect Marriage, which I gave 5 stars. It's one of my favorite thrillers. I actually just posted a video a couple weeks ago on my channel where I went over all of my favorite thriller books of all time, and The Perfect Marriage is one of them. I know a lot of people don't like that book, but I loved it because it was so twisty turny. Like, I never knew what was going on, and the twists really were something that I just loved about that story. And I was a little bit nervous about this one because that's the only book of hers that I've read, but I've heard that Geneva Rose does love a bit of a cash grab, and this one was not originally meant to be a series, so I was like, dang, this one's probably going to be a cash grab, but I was excited nonetheless. Basically, in the first book, we are following this woman, and she is a high profile attorney, and she's married to a writer, I believe, and he ends up cheating on her and takes his mistress to their like second house that they have, and he wakes up with blood on his hands. The mistress is dead next to her, and obviously the police are like, he killed her, of course. And our main character is actually like, okay, I just found out my husband was cheating on me and he was having this affair, but he claims to not have done this, and I don't believe that he was capable of committing this murder. So she decides she's gonna do her lawyer duties and she's gonna defend him in the court of law, which she does. I don't want to spoil the end of the first book, but in this one, we're basically following the same character, and she has a new husband, but he has also ended up cheating on her. So she decides that she's going to get a divorce from him, which is where The Perfect Divorce comes from. But new DNA evidence has been dug up by the police on her original husband's case, and she is kind of being looked at because of this new evidence, and new things are being revealed, secrets are coming out, new things are happening because of this evidence. And this one was, again, very, very fast paced, even more fast paced than Last Party. This was one of the fastest paced books that I read this month. It was so fast paced. I would say like the first like 75% of this were entertaining, but it wasn't anything like super crazy or anything like that. What I really liked about The Perfect Marriage is that I feel like it had a lot of twists throughout the story that had me gagged. This one didn't have that, but the twists that happened at the end that were back to back to back to back were so crazy and phenomenal that I had to rate this book a 4 star. I would say like before the 75% mark, it was like a 3 star for me, but then the ending was truly a 5 star for me. So I ended up on a 4 star because I did really love the end, and the end was something that made it worth it for me. Like, I think reading the rest of the book, because it is so short, it's less than 300 pages, was worth the end. The end was so good and shocking, and I truly just had such a good time, like in the bath, gasping at what was happening in the story. My next 4 star is The Neighbor Favor by Christina Forrest. And this one follows Lily, who's a shy, bookish woman, and she dreams of becoming a children's editor, but is stuck in nonfiction. And it really is kind of heartbreaking for her. And she's kind of like the black sheep of her family because she has 2 other sisters who are way more successful than her. And she has this favorite book series that had a very like limited publishing run, and so nobody else has really heard of it, but she loves the series. It's a black fantasy series, and she adored it. And she like every so often like looks up the author's name to see if they're coming out with anything new or anything like that. And so they actually create a website one day, and she finds the website and finds their email and ends up emailing this author. And so in the beginning of this book, for probably not like the first 20%, like we get a little bit of story, and then for probably like 15 to 20% of the book, we get emails between her and the author as they're writing back and forth to each other. And that is like a big part of the story, but he kind of just ends up ghosting her after months of them emailing back and forth. And this really kind of breaks her heart because they were growing close to each other, they were revealing things to each other, and that really hurt her. So she's kind of like written off love and hasn't really dated or done anything like that since because of this interaction. Months later, she's still crushed, but she needs a date to her sister's wedding. So she enlists the help of her new neighbor who lives in her apartment complex that she's staying in to basically help her find a date to this wedding. Little does she know, though, is that her neighbor, Nick, is actually her favorite author that she was emailing with. And he finds out this pretty quickly. He knows for a while before she does. And that's really like what draws this back for me, is because I do love this trope. I love like the You've Got Mail kind of thing where people are messaging back and forth online and then know each other in person and don't connect the dots. I didn't really like how in this it was so separated. I normally like that they overlap. And he did find out so much earlier than her and didn't tell her. And I don't really like when people like withhold information like that. Like, that's such a crazy thing. Like, basically, you know her in real life and you know way more about her than she's actually told you because you were this person that she was emailing, but she doesn't even know that you know all this personal information about her. That's low key messed up, but I really enjoyed everything else about the story. I enjoyed the writing. Again, another quick, cool read. And I love seeing her family and her sisters and how they were all there for each other. And I did really enjoy Nick as a character, despite him kind of withholding this information. And he had stuff happening with his past too that made him do this, which gives an explanation, but I don't think that's an excuse. But I also really did like their romance, and I think they balance each other out so well. And I like seeing our main character kind of in her job, struggling, and her so unhappy in her job, but then eventually like trying to work to get to a better place to actually be in the job that she loves and enjoys. I just really had such a good time with this one. The only reason it didn't get a 5 star for me was because I didn't like that Nick was withholding the information, but everything else in the story I really liked. My next 4 star was Killing Stalking Volume 2. I can't talk too much about this series because it is super graphic and mature for sure. It's a manhwa, and basically we are following Yoon Bum, and he's like a very scrawny, quiet man, and he has this crush on this other boy named Sang Woo, who is super popular and handsome, and they actually cross paths in military training, but they are very much like disconnected after that. But he still has a crush on him and basically stalks him and then breaks into his house, which alone is crazy. But what he sees inside this man's house is a nightmare, and then he may or may not be taken captive by Sang Woo. And it is a horror manhwa, but it also has romance in it between the two characters, but it's very crazy, very toxic, like very dark romance. It's giving like when I read Rena Kent's Deviant King book, and that's like a bully romance, like a real bully romance. It's definitely not healthy. It's not anything to look at as that. It's very just like a crazy, toxic, unhealthy, like not even just toxic, like literally illegal relationship. Like illegal things are happening. Very, very graphic, horrific things are happening, not just between the two main characters, but them also doing things to other people. And this is just a continuation of that. I feel like this one was a lot slower. The first one was so like shocking and jarring, and I wish we just had like a little bit more action in this. Like some crazy things did happen, but I honestly thought this one was going to be even crazier than the first one, and I wouldn't say that it was. So that's why I gave it 4 stars, but I still did enjoy it because it is very crazy. It's just very enjoyable for me, even though it's so insane. And that's why I do enjoy it so much, because it is actually very crazy. And my last 4 star is Immaculate Conception by Ling Ling Huang, which was actually my June book club pick for my Patreon book club, the final chapter. And this one was a little bit difficult for me to rate. I think I originally gave it 3.5 stars. This one follows Anka, and she is in art school, and she ends up seeing this woman named Matilda, who's also in art school and has an obsession with her. And they end up striking up a friendship. And Matilda has a lot of trauma. Like, she's literally an orphan because both her parents passed away when she was younger. And they have this very intense bond where Matilda kind of relies on Anka for emotional support. But Anka is low-key jealous and envious of Matilda because Matilda, I would say, is a better artist than her, at least more recognized, praised better in art school, but then she's also getting opportunities outside of art school that Anka isn't getting, and Anka feels kind of like a fraud. My dog is literally whining at me. What do you want, Gio? I don't know what you want. What? Oh, guys. He's such a baby. I'll put down the crochet hook for now. But Anka and Matilda have this crazy codependent relationship. But Anka actually falls in love and marries a billionaire whose family's company is actually funding this empathy technology called scaffolding. Basically, you can go into somebody else's mind and it's supposed to like take away their trauma and make it easily bearable for them. For it's also supposed to create empathy between the two people because the person is basically kind of able to experience their trauma like it would be being inside their head. Guys, I literally have fur all over me now, but I guess it's fine. But there's like this technology, and Anka and Matilda later on in their lives, way after art school, well, Matilda ends up going missing, and Anka is very much higher profile in the art scene later on in the story. And basically, Matilda goes under conservatorship, and Anka ends up using this empathy technology on Matilda. And this one talks a lot about a lot of things. I think it does a really good job at discussing its themes. It talks kind of like a little bit about AI. It talks about this empathy technology, which I thought was so interesting because the empathy technology I feel like is made with good intentions, but obviously I think that just because you're exposed to something doesn't mean that you're automatically going to be empathetic towards that thing. And so I thought that was really interesting, those discussions, and like seeing basically someone's autonomy taken away from them because of this technology, because you have someone in your mind all the time permanently. And so that was also really crazy. But then this one talks about jealousy and like being envious, and also kind of critiques the art scene, which I don't really know that much about, but I liked seeing those critiques of like the art world and all of that. I thought it was all really, really well done. For some reason, I didn't get a 5-star feeling from this one, but I really liked it overall. Like, I thought it discussed the themes so well. I just wish that we kind of explored the world a little bit more, because the world in this one is different than our current world. And so I wish that we kind of just explored that more. But the end of this one also is insane. The ending really, really shocked me a lot. And overall, this was like such a good one, especially for my book club, because there was so much to discuss, and I really did have a good time reading it. Next, we're moving on to my 1 4.5 star, and that is Sugar by Mia Ballard. I have been so anticipating reading Mia Ballard because she is a Black Indigenous horror author. She's an indie author, and a lot of people have been discovering her this year. She came out with her first book, I think, in like November or December of last year, which was Sugar, and then she released a novella earlier this year as well as Shy Girl. And I've since read the novella in July, and I also plan on reading Shy Girl in July. I really like her work so far. She writes very much unhinged woman stories. So if you like unhinged women, you'll like her work. So this one follows Satara, and she kind of lives a perfect housewife life. She doesn't have any kids, but she is married to like this rich husband, but finds out that he's actually having an affair with her best friend. So she has done what she's always done, and we see her throughout the story as she like does this. We go back in time basically and see her as she has disposed of men in the past without a hitch. She's done it multiple times. So she's like, I have to do that in this situation now. But then she also low-key wants to take out her best friend, and she also gets involved with a love witch. That's all that I want to say about this one, but it was so good. It was so unhinged. There was just a little bit about the end that I didn't really enjoy, but I loved everything else about the story. Like, it was so good. It was so phenomenal. I love the unhinged woman vibes. I loved kind of the time period. It is a little bit like historical. It's more like 80s, I think it is. We get flashbacks to like the 50s, 60s, 70s, and I really liked that as well. And just seeing Satara's life and how crazy she is. There are some elements of the end that I did really like, but then also some parts of it that I didn't like. But that's what kind of drew it down to a 4.5 for me. But this is one of the most perfect horror books for me that I've ever read. Like, I love this type of horror. It was just that little bit at the end that I was like, oh, like, it just personally wasn't for me, like some of the elements of the end, but everything else was so good and so phenomenal. And she's such a good unhinged woman character. I love Satara so much, and honestly, she's low-key relatable. Sorry if the angle has changed a little bit. My camera battery ended up dying. But now we're moving on to the last two books, which are my 5 stars for the month. And the first one was one that I did not expect at all. I just checked it out from my library because they had it, and I saw the audiobook was short, and I was like, I need something while I clean. And so I put it on and I flew through it, and I loved it. And that is My Husband by Maud Ventura. This one was so crazy. This one is kind of a thriller, but it's more of like a literary fiction. It's just kind of dark. We're following a woman, and we don't ever actually really find out her name. She's just really called like the wife. And she has a very enviable life. She has a successful career. She's beautiful. She has children. But most importantly, she has her husband. And she's obsessed with her husband, and every single move that he makes, she psychoanalyzes everything that he does. Like, if they're sitting on the couch and he doesn't grab her hand, she's psychoanalyzing that. So she's always constantly planning and plotting and trying to figure out how to keep the relationship perfect, how to be the perfect woman for him, how to make it so he likes her, that he does these things for her. Even like, he once compared her as a fruit, and then also one of their friends, like they have another couple friend, and compares the wife in that couple to a fruit, and she's like hurt because she's like, how would you ever think would be that fruit, and then she would be this fruit? It's insane, but honestly very relatable. That's why I liked this one so much, is because I'm not nearly as extreme as this, but I think most women can relate to being like this in some way, some form, at some point. And maybe some women can't, but a lot of women that I know can definitely relate to this quite a bit. Again, not nearly as extreme, of course, but just like overthinking things. And because men cause you to overthink, they don't communicate super well. So then you're just kind of forced to overthink everything and try to plan everything and be perfect and try to make men like you. And I just thought it was so relatable. Again, it's like a really short, quick read. I finished it in one afternoon on audio. I don't want to say too much because I feel like I didn't know this going in and it made it better. But there was just part of the story that was very, very shocking for me, and it twisted everything on its head, and I really liked it. It kind of reminds me of like the same way that it did when I read Allegedly by Tiffany D. Jackson. Both those have this element to it that's introduced that just shakes the whole story up, and I really, really liked that a lot. I don't want to say too much about this one because it is so short, and I feel like you kind of just need to read it for yourself. I think if you're interested in just reading a story about a woman who is man-centered, like whether you relate to her or not, or if you're just interested in it, I feel like this is a big discussion that's been talked about, at least lately on my like For You page and stuff, because of Love Island and some of the girls on there being very like man-centered versus like friendship-centered. And so I feel like I've seen a lot of discourse around that recently. So if that's something that you're interested in exploring a little bit deeper, I think this is a great one. And my last 5-star is Can't Get Enough by Kennedy Ryan. This one was so good. Like, it's definitely going to be on my favorites of the year for sure. This one is the last book in the Skyland series, which I've loved every single book in the series. This one's my second favorite. I think I need to like reread all of them to see, but this one and the first book are competing for my favorites because I really, really like this one. We're following Hendrix, and she has an amazing life. Like, she has great friends, she has an amazing family, she has a thriving business, and she like gets to travel and do all these things. It literally says like she lives a picture perfect life, but she's also caring for an aging parent who has dementia, and we follow that a lot in the story of her dealing with that. If you read the new Abby Jimenez Sayo, Remember Me, and you kind of liked that element of caring for like an aging parent, but you didn't like that book, or even if you did like that book, I feel like you would really like this one because I think this one's definitely done better than that one. So regardless if you liked it or not, I think that you could enjoy this one if you liked that element in the story, because I personally like a romance that has a little bit of like a deeper element to it, and this one was introduced with that. But with everything that she has going on, she's never really like focused on romance or getting into a relationship. She doesn't even want kids or anything like that. So she just focuses on herself. But then she meets this man named Maverick, and Maverick is forbidden for her. She cannot date him because she actually like manages basically this like celebrity, and she recently broke up with Maverick, and they were in a long-term relationship together because Maverick has had a kid. She's like basically like a preteen now, or like a teenager, and he does not want to have any more kids. He doesn't want to start over, but his partner that he was with wanted to have kids, so they ended up breaking up. But Maverick is really drawn to Hendrix, and Hendrix is really drawn to him, but it's basically forbidden for her because she doesn't want to destroy the relationship that she has with a client basically. And this one was so good. I loved the romance between them. Like, you could really feel the chemistry jumping off page. And I describe Maverick as like a man who, if he wanted to, he would, you know, like if he wants to, he will. When she needed him, he showed up for her, but he also gave her the space to be her own person, obviously, and live her life. And he was there when she needed it, but when she needed her space, he gave her that too. And I thought that was so beautiful. And again, adding this deeper element of caring for an aging parent, and also seeing like some of the things that Maverick was going through. I just really love how Kennedy Ryan writes her stories. They're so like real to me. That's what I love, is she truly explores like the highs and lows. All of her books, I would say, are very positive to me, but they explore the lows of life and they explore the highs of life, and they have romances and friendships and family and everything just wrapped up, and then they feel like real life. And it's just so well written. Like, truly, her chemistry, everything, the feelings, everything in her stories jump off the page. They're so good. They're so phenomenal. I recommend any Kennedy Ryan books, especially the Skyland series, because I feel like at least some of her other series that I've read, I feel like wouldn't be everybody's cup of tea, or a little bit heavier. But this series, I feel like, is the perfect balance of being like heavier, having emotional elements, but then also being very hopeful and just very real. So those are all the books that I read in June. I almost finished 2 more books on the ratings blanket. And so basically I did this purple. Here is where I did all 4 rows that I needed to do for the 2 books. But I just love to yap, so it's hard for me to yap and crochet like that at the same time. But I like making a little bit of progress with y'all. Let me know what your favorite book of June was down below. I would love to know. And while you're down there, you can also leave me the little brain emoji for Immaculate Conception to let me know that you made it to the end. And I will see y'all in the next one. Bye, everybody. If you got my number, don't add me, 'cause baby, I'm on hiatus.